Okay, so we now begin with the actual chapter 4, other revenue sources. So it's a lot of pages, 33 of them, but majority of these would not apply in the Philippine setting. So we're going to skip quite a number of pages, all right? So with regards to other revenue sources, sorry, the main source of funds for churches is the contributions from the members, right, in the form of tithes and offerings. But other revenue sources, so these are activities or programs that the church can conduct to generate additional funds for the church. Okay, so we have here alternative source of revenue. So investment income. Um, this is tricky. Churches can probably put some of their funds into investments. If they have excess cash that they're not going to use currently for operations, if the cash is only being idle in their bank accounts, so they might decide to put it in investments. Okay, so we do here in the Philippines, we do have bonds, short-term bonds like 3 months or 90 days, 6 months or 180 days, and then we also have 1 year bonds, 2, 3, 5, 10 year bonds. Okay, so the church can probably put them in short term bonds, less than 1 year, and then from that they can earn a bit, 2 to 4% of interest. Okay, but bonds are the safest type of investment, so normally that's uh, the safe choice of where to put your money. But for stocks and mutual funds, they are kind of volatile. The amount of money could be lesser, it could be higher, but for bonds, your money, the investments is stuck at that point. It's not going to go lower. It's not going lower. It's going to be at that point, and then you have additional 2 to 4%. So it's the best choice for investments. Okay, bonds. Rental income, if the church does have idle property, they're not using it, and they can probably, let others use it for a fee, then they can generate rental income. Okay, rental income, it could be for a building, use of a hall for a day or two, use of the property, let's say computer lab, or use of the library, use of the chairs, tables, it could be that. Okay, income from parking lots or garages. If you notice, these are applicable to large churches with excess properties, excess cash, idle properties, and then they have parking lots or garages that they are not using, right? So they can probably charge for the parking, things like that. But for us, small churches, small medium churches, normally we'd rather not charge money for this. We try to simply give it for free, as gratuity to members or to the community. Okay, we do have the tendency to give things for free. Um, the main point would be to help others. If we can help others, then why not, right? Uh, Something like that. So we're not really profit minded people or business minded people, right? Okay, so for activity or revenues, these are other things that they can churches may engage in to generate additional revenue. So bookstores, for it to be related to the mission or purpose of the church. So selling Bibles, prayer books, or religious materials, or anything related to the conduct of the church. And then you have your thrift shops. Let's say if you're fundraising, um, garage sale or selling old clothes or old books of the members, they can do thrift shops. Schools and other educational programs, others are able to put up, Bible colleges or Bible schools. But it would be better to really register the, you have the registration for the church, and then you have the separate registration for the Bible school, which is the case for GBC and BBBC. Okay, separate registrations in a way, because there are certain impositions on the churches and educational institutions. Sometimes there are different regulations, so it would be better to separate the registration and not mix the two. Okay. Of course, in operating an educational institution, so you have your income from tuition and other school fees charged to students, and the Bible school could cater not only to members but also to, of course, other people. Then you have cafes, coffee shops, and restaurants or cafeteria. For the most part, they can cater to the members, or for the convenience of the members who are going to church or the Bible school students. But they can also cater to, outsiders. Special events, maybe. Okay, so there are examples here, but I'm not sure. For the most part, Baptist churches are already busy enough in soul winning activities, so there might not be enough time for special events. But we do have some special events, but instead of generating money, we spend money, right? Like in DBBS, um, what do you call it? Outreach programs in the communities. Normally, those are spending programs. We have event hosting weddings, banquets, reunions, other special meetings. Broadcasting activities, not much. I don't know. Baptist churches are not really business minded. Normally, when we do events, we don't, ask for much fees. Normally, we just ask for a small fee that would cover the overhead expenses, but for anything excessive, we don't do that normally. Issues to consider: mission and purpose. Of course, if it's going to support the achievement of the mission and purpose, then we can do so. But if it's going to hinder, if it's going to be disruptive of pursuing the mission and purpose, then rather not do it. Okay. Watershed criteria significantly help the church advance its mission and purpose. Before you do these revenue generating activities, so you have to consider this. Okay. Would it help the achievement of the mission and purpose? And then would it generate significant income or positive cash flow for the church, or do both of the above? Okay. So sometimes if it's going to significantly help the church reach its mission and purpose, even without this second one, then it's good enough, right? Um, but normally this first one, this should be achieved. Okay. Some churches will not consider an activity that does not meet the first criterion, regardless of whether it meets the second criterion. A position which is understandable, of course. And then 10 questions to ask before starting an alternative revenue source of activity. In a way, if you still have time, okay, if the church and the members or the workers still have time to do it, then why not? But if they're already busy enough, with the current activities, then might not want to burden them further and burn them out. Okay. Would it help carry out the stated mission and purpose? Okay. Uh, would it have a financial impact, positive, okay, positive financial impact for the church? Expected financial outcomes, would it, generate additional revenue, or would this church be spending more? Have we adequately evaluated the legal implications? Okay. Um, with regards to legal implications, would it not be considered business-like transactions, which may uh, which may be a ground for us to lose the tax exemption if there is. Okay. Have we adequately evaluated the tax implications? Okay. Adequately insure for the risk related to the activity. So the church is normally responsible for all activities being conducted by the members, and of course, if it's within the church premises and it's for the regular activities of the church, they have to ensure that there are no risks for the participants. If there are accidents that happen, the church management would be responsible for that. They might be called to, answer some questions, maybe, what do you call that? Be responsible for the payment of medical expenses if there are accidents or something. So things like that. Are there public relations risks? Other risks associated with activity? We do have a chapter dedicated for risk management, so we'll discuss this part on that chapter. Do we have the leadership, management, and staff capacity to adequately conduct the activity, and then the potential risks and disadvantages of conducting the activity? Are they present or not? Okay, so there's that. Okay, and then for the legal issues, okay, zoning and land use laws, risk of legal liability, injuries, other incidents, insurance coverage, if there are risks, are they insured? Public accommodation laws, certain business transactions would have their respective regulations, which if the church conducts them, then they would have to observe those regulations. Risk of reputational damage, okay, in case there are accidents or there are outside participants which may act differently than the members, or which may come into question the reason for conducting the activity. Okay, I'm just going to check. Okay, I'm going to pause for a bit. Okay, so continuing on, tax considerations, unrelated business income. So again, I couldn't remember clearly, but I think the tax exemption for churches call that their activities should be exclusively related to religious purposes. That if they ever engage with business like transactions, they might lose their tax exemption. Although for educational institutions, I think the clause is that all income must be used exclusively or substantially all for educational purpose. When they say substantially all, it's around 70% must be used for the educational purpose. Okay, and then if they have other income that are considered business like or normally taxable, then that part of the income will be subject to taxes. Okay, and then if they are taxable, then the church would have to pay, file the returns and then pay for the corresponding taxes. Okay, so that is why for the most part the churches would rather not engage in unrelated business activity, or they would not deviate from their main purpose to avoid such consequences. Okay? An unrelated business activity is a revenue generating activity that constitutes a trade or business, is regularly carried on, and is not substantially related to the church's exempt status. Okay? So again, they might lose their tax exemption, so would rather not risk it. What constitutes a trade or business? Sale of goods or performance of services. Okay. Selling of t-shirts, selling of pumpkins. When is an activity regularly carried on? Annual activity, seasonal, but it's still considered um, regularly carried on. Okay, if it's every year, at least every year, or certain certain month every year, or if it's every month, even more so. How does the church determine whether an activity is substantially related to its exempt status, exempt purpose? So if it's related to, achieving the purpose and mission of the church, then it's substantially related. Narrowly worded. But again, this is, you know, a US based example, so we're not going to discuss this much. But in the Philippines, for the registration of churches, we do have articles of incorporation. In the articles of incorporation, it's stated there the mission, the purpose, the vision of the church, their main purpose, their main activities, their secondary activities, what type of activities they're going to conduct. So it's normally stated in the articles of incorporation. And if the church deviate from any of that, so it would be considered unrelated business activity. Okay? Activities that include some related and some unrelated elements, gray area, but better not to deviate from it. Examples of unrelated business activities: operating a public restaurant, revenue generating parking lot, selling non-religious items in a bookstore, providing administrative services to other unrelated organizations for a fee, conducting travel tours not adequately religious or educational in nature, or selling advertising in the church's newsletter. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a bit since it's already, 17 minutes.